Hi there, welcome back into Sit If You're Able. I'm your host, Max Abel, and going to have a little bit of a different show this week because had a show recorded with a guest, went to upload it and put it together, and it all kind of fell apart and went to hell, and we had technical difficulties, and now that guest, I'm pretty sure he's on the golf course right now, so he's unavailable, just me this week, so a solo show, and looking forward to it. So we're going to be talking opening day this week. Going to be a fun weekend of baseball starting on Thursday, lasting through the weekend, and then kicking off the marathon that is the Major League Baseball season. And let's get right into it. So bad news right away. We have two games already postponed. The Braves are in Philadelphia. The Brewers in New York to take on the Mets. Both games have been postponed, moving from Thursday afternoon to Friday afternoon because the weather is actually not very good in the Northeast in late March, early April. I think only people who haven't been able to figure that out are Major League Baseball, but whatever. Moving on, though, first game at least played in the United States this season is going to be the Orioles hosting the Angels. The Orioles getting a look at their new ace, Corbin Burns, who they acquired from Milwaukee in the offseason. He'll be starting for Baltimore, who's coming off of a great year. Got a lot of young talent there. Going to be a fun team to watch as they look to repeat as AL East champions, and certainly a matchup to look at there. Another matchup I like this weekend, the Giants and Padres. I think a couple teams there in the National League West that fly under the radar. Everyone wants to talk about the Dodgers for sure and all the moves they've made, and maybe the Diamondbacks as well coming off an NL pennant, but I think the Giants and Padres, two very talented teams, have a lot of veteran players there, have some good young players as well, players who have played big games in the postseason, and I think they're going to surprise some people. They're scoring off, and good pitching matchup as well on Thursday, opening day. Logan Webb, who's an all-star pitcher, kind of a sinker slider guy, doesn't strike a whole lot of people out, doesn't light up the radar gun, doesn't really get all the headlines, but a very good pitcher, and he's going up against the veteran Yu Darvish, who had a scoreless start in the season opening series in South Korea last week. As I said earlier, the first game's on American soil happening this weekend. The Dodgers and Padres squared off last week in South Korea and split those two games. Little two-game set there. Yu Darvish got the start in the first one for San Diego, went 3 2/3 innings scoreless. Dodgers really drove up his pitch count. He had to leave early, so he'll be hoping for a little bit longer start against the Giants, but a couple teams to keep an eye on and follow this season because I think they're going to surprise some people. Moving on, staying in the National League West and in Southern California, Dodger Stadium, home opener for LA. They take on the Cardinals at 4:10. Tyler Glasnow against Miles Michaelis, the pitching matchup there. And I don't think anybody needs to point out why the Dodgers are interesting to watch, all the star power there, World Series or bust expectations. But the Cardinals, I think, a team that coming off of, honestly, the first bad season I can remember the Cardinals having in my lifetime. They're not always great, but it feels like they're never bad. That was certainly not the case last year. They were quite awful. And a big reason why they were bad was their starting pitching. They've made some moves to address that this offseason. Bringing in some veterans. They brought in Lance Lynn, they brought in Kyle Gibson, they brought in Sonny Gray to try and solidify that rotation. We'll see how well that works out for them. Still love their offense. They've got some good young hitters. They've got some good veteran hitters. I expect them to score plenty of runs. It's just going to be a matter of run prevention, I think, for them and how they do in a pretty wide open NL Central. But they'll kick things up at Dodger Stadium, 4:10 Eastern Time, Thursday afternoon. Moving on, another good matchup out of the American League East. The Blue Jays are in Tampa to take on the Rays. Good matchup there as you'd expect. Berrios and Eflin. Zach Eflin, who's kind of Tampa Bay special, was a kind of middle of the rotation, mediocre guy in Philadelphia. Comes over to Tampa Bay and now he's a frontline starting pitcher. Jose Berrios, acquired a couple years ago by the Blue Jays. He came over from Minnesota. He's getting the opening day start, and a couple teams there who I don't think that either one of them's the betting favorite in the American League East, but both of them certainly enough talent, certainly enough pitching, offense, defense, you name it, they both have it. They can both win the American League East in the division that I think's pretty wide open there. So good divisional matchup to open up the season there. Moving on, one of the better matchups, I'd say probably the second best matchup of the weekend, Down in Houston, the Yankees and Astros squaring off. Good rivalry matchup there. Certainly has been a one-sided rivalry, at least as far as the postseason goes. The Astros have had their way with the Yankees, taking them out in the championship series a couple of times, I think 3 times now, in 2017, 2019, and then back in 2022. Astros, also people forget the Astros beat the Yankees back in 2015 in the AL wildcard game. So they've met a lot in the postseason, but it's been all Astros, and certainly with the cheating scandal and the sign stealing, trash can banging, some vitriol there in that head-to-head series. But they'll open things up down at Minute Maid Park in Houston. A couple of left-handers on the mound. Nestor Cortez for the Yankees, trying to bounce back. It was a bad year for him last year, coming off an all-star appearance in 2022. Struggled in 2023. He was hurt a lot. But when he was on the mound, it didn't go well for him. So he's trying to bounce back. And he's up against Framber Valdez, who's one of the better left-handed starters in Major League Baseball, coming off of a really good year. Threw a lot of innings, 198 innings, made 31 starts, struck out 200 hitters, put up a 3.45 ERA. Really good numbers from him, and he gets the opening day nod for the Houston Astros. They will start things up at 4:10 on the East Coast. Staying in the Lone Star State, Houston to Arlington now. The Texas Rangers, defending World Series champs, they open things up against the Chicago Cubs. Nathan Eovaldi against Justin Steele. Good pitching matchup there. National TV as well, as they square off on ESPN. And a couple of teams who, I think one of them trying to stay on top in the Rangers and one of them trying to get into the postseason. The Cubs just barely missed the postseason last year. They bring in Craig Counsell from their division rival to manage the team. And high expectations for the Cubs. They spend a bunch of money. They bring in Shota Imanaga to be in their rotation. Probably going to be I think their 3 starter. And they shell out some money to bring back Cody Bellinger as well. So a lot of high expectations for the Cubs. And, of course, the Rangers coming off a World Series championship. Should be a fun environment down in Arlington. Moving on, another good matchup. Maybe not a great matchup, but a fun team to watch. Going to be the Arizona Diamondbacks. Going to be interesting to see how they do. They're up against the Colorado Rockies, who are very bad. And that's about it. They're not really good at anything. They got a couple good players, but not going to be a fun team to watch. The Diamondbacks will be, though. And they square off down at Chase Field in Phoenix, 10-10 on the East Coast. If you want to stay up late and watch that one, it'll be Kyle Freeland against Zach Gallen. Pitching matchup there. And Zach Gallen, probably the most underrated pitcher in baseball, starting to get a little bit more notoriety because of the Diamondbacks postseason run last year and him starting some big postseason games. But you want to talk about a guy who's as good as it gets in the National League and in all of Major League Baseball. He gets the opening day start there, and really a rotation that is it's going to be interesting to watch, not only for the national audience, but for us here at Bellarmine. Of course, Brandon Pfaadt going to be a part of that rotation, at least to start the season. Was going to be their 4 starter. Now he'll probably be their 5 starter once the season gets rolling, as the Diamondbacks just now acquired left-hander Jordan Montgomery. Montgomery's coming off of a World Series championship with the Rangers. He's a guy who, with a starting pitcher, you want a guy who can log innings or a guy who can really prevent runs. Jordan Montgomery's a guy who can do both. He logs innings, very tough to score against, had a really good postseason. Diamondbacks bring him in, and now that's a rotation that just got a whole lot deeper and a whole lot scarier. And as I said, I think the National League West pretty much spoken for with how much talent the Dodgers have. But I think the Diamondbacks just solidified themselves as a World Series contender here in 2024. And then one last matchup I like, one of the games that was postponed from Thursday onto Friday, the Braves and Phillies. I think the best matchup of the weekend. These two teams have met in the postseason each of the last 2 years. We don't need to go over how those series went, but they'll square off this weekend, now Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I think you're talking about, the environments are going to be great everywhere. Opening weekend, it always is, but you want to talk about what's probably going to be a postseason type environment. It'll be like that in Philadelphia. Expect that place to be packed, loud, obnoxious, rude, all the great things about Philadelphia as the Braves come into town, and 3 great pitching matchups as well. It'll be Spencer Strider versus Zach Wheeler on now Friday afternoon. If you like strikeouts, that's a game you'll want to watch. And then on Saturday, I think a matchup that's as good as any matchup this weekend. Aaron Nola versus Max Fried. That's the game 2 starters for those teams. I think are as good as many teams' game 1 starters. So that'll be a good pitching matchup as well. And then Sunday, Chris Sale makes his Braves debut. Going to be interesting to watch how he holds up this season, if he can stay healthy. And he's up against Ranger Suarez, who not the biggest name, but a guy who's made a lot of starts for the Phillies, made a lot of postseason starts, and been really tough for Philadelphia. So that's kind of the rundown. A little look at opening weekend in the upcoming season here in Major League Baseball. Can't wait to get it started. No, I'll be camped out in front of the TV all weekend, so hope it's a good weekend. Hope the Braves win some games in Philadelphia. That hasn't been a real kind place for us over the years, but going to be a fun weekend, going to be a fun season. It always is, and we appreciate you tuning in. Hope you enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you next week. This has been Sit If You're Able.